said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy...
Flyover State of Fear. Welcome back to Flyover State of Fear. We got a great guest for you this week in Lon Harris, and of course my co-host Brian. How you doing, Lon? How you doing, Brian?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah. Well, doing well.
Doing well.
He got it grammatically correct. I did not.
Yeah.
And that's probably the first time in my life I've ever done that, and only because I think about it every time I say good. And then I was like, since you said good first, I had the opportunity to do that thought when you said it.
Yes, yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to say well this time.
You know what?
And look, it really backfired, kind of.
Send enough work emails
I called you
all
out
day.
on it, yeah.
Send enough work emails all day, and that hope you're well. Nope, I am doing well. That is consistent from 11 to noon, or from 9 to noon.
11 to noon. What a work day.
No, I
That's
meant to say
really
9
suffering.
to noon in the morning.
Suffering under the yoke of the man with that.
All
day from the early hours of 11 a.m. till the crack of noon.
No, 9 to 5. 9 to 5.
The guy
I wish.
Look at that. Podcaster hours, huh?
That 1 hour work podcast. Oof.
My goodness.
Lon, you are
LA
our
freelance writer.
Lon, from 11 to noon, you are our most returning guest at the moment. So thanks for being here. There, we talked to Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And,
that's right.
Nope. Yeah. I remember you introduced that to me, and I was thinking about us talking about the episode recently because I was just like, I'm pretty sure I spent the whole time being like, I can't believe Donald Sutherland was a lead in the 70s. They're all so unique looking, and that was like most of my commentary. So
it's true.
Just mesmerized by the ugliness of actors in the 70s.
All 70s movies, when you go back now, you're like, they were allowed to look like this? You didn't have to be on human growth hormone for 4 months before appearing in a movie? That was not a rule? That's crazy.
True. Before the early 2000s, when a man takes his shirt off on film, you're like, that's a regular, normal human.
Looks like a guy. Even like a celebrity. Like sometimes you'll be watching a movie and it'll be like Jimmy Caan is the romantic lead, and then he'll take off his shirt and he just looks like Jimmy Caan. He's not, yoked.
He doesn't do a groundskeeper Willie and rip his shirt off and reveal that he's shredded.
But everything from everything. Even we were just watching, it was like the 80s, but we were watching Monkey Shines and a young Stanley Tucci pops up. And he's a handsome man, but he's receding like the rest of us. He's this. He's that.
You would call him wiry,
But it's crazy because the hottest dudes from 70s movies compared to guys today, like Robert Redford, a very handsome man. Yes. Don't get me wrong, but in 70s movies, he still kind of looks like a regular guy too, like just a very attractive regular guy.
It's such the truth, but I'm thinking about that the other day.
No one was an expendable in 1977. Just not one person.
It's arguably to talk about that before this movie too, because the lead that you're kind of, at least supposed to, he's the closest thing to a character you're supposed to connect with, is also the Northman. So
right, that's what I mean. Alexander Skarsgård is baseline for starring in a 2023 movie,
and he's huge.
He's believable as a Viking. He didn't have to do anything extra. They were just put this braid in your hair and here's the sword. Now you're a Viking.
Yeah. And in this movie, he's supposed to be the most pathetic man you've ever seen.
Right.
So, no, I just was making me chuckle thinking about it the other day. But yeah, so speaking of that, you guys mentioned the Northman and stuff before we get into Infinity Pool. You guys watch anything recently, or like have any current recommendations in the genre?
Did you guys see Cobweb? That one's popping up
Yeah,
on streaming now. I
yeah.
I was
watched
gonna
that.
say I want to watch it. I've not got to see it yet though.
I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know if consent like when you if somebody told you like here's what happens in Cobweb, I don't think it sounds like that great. Like it's a little bit thin in terms of the premise, but it as an excuse for Anthony Starr and Lizzie Kaplan to just like really play into being creeps. It's
hmm
fantastic. Like
It's fun.
they're both really great in it and very creepy. And just as a showcase for that, like we just got these two really good character actors and let them go nuts with it. I think
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Lizzie
I really enjoyed that.
Kaplan in that. Yeah. So check out Cobweb. It's also that great combining of a nice haunted house story, or kind of what you think's going to be a haunted house story with like
Yeah.
creepy kid shit. So yeah, Cobweb was a nice surprise. It's on. I think it's on Hulu right now. With
It's on Hulu. It just popped up on Hulu.
Did
The
it just
other
yeah,
come good? I
one,
want to. I want to see it because I just speaking of Hulu, I just watched The Boogeyman
yeah.
oh yeah,
from
yeah.
this year. Very bog standard, kind of by the numbers. It had a bit of a cool monster in it, but everything was pretty like. I would hope Cobweb was a step above what I thought of Boogeyman.
Actually, this is a good double feature here. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I did actually. Those two movies back to back.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
like that Boogeyman movie. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I
Oh, I
didn't
was
mean
just
to
gonna
cut you off.
say, Cobweb and Boogeyman have like the same DNA, except Cobweb's the fun art kids, like the fun like indie art kids version of like I think kind of what the Boogeyman has in it. But Boogeyman's just your generic studio horror movie, and I enjoyed the fact that it was that. I was like, it's kind of refreshing.
I did the Stephen King story has this hook that they sort of use, which is the idea that the boogeyman can impersonate other people. Like that's what's scary is
The
Mhm.
that
mimic part of it, yeah,
right
which is
Yeah,
you
cool.
think
Yeah.
it's your dad or your therapist or whatever, but that actually it's the boogeyman, and they don't really use
no,
that in the movie hardly at all. It's very much
Yeah.
a
You
very
hear the thing
standard.
like talking and making noise a lot, but they never really like
it's
make
not
that a
Right.
used.
focus of it using that very
I
much.
feel like a lot of movies were kind of in this neo J horror moment where a lot of movies are going back to like The Ring and The Grudge and like that sort of format. Like Smile was the one I
hmm
noticed where like, oh, this is just a J horror curse movie. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
exactly like where
I
it's
feel like
like
Talk to Me has some of that
Talk to Me was
too.
the other one I was
definitely.
just thinking of, where it's like, yeah, you get the curse, and then there's like rules, and it's like you've got so many days, and then the hallucinations get more and more intense as the person
Yeah,
investigates and gets
absolutely.
You
closer to the answer. And I feel like Boogeyman was doing that too, but it's a weird fit. Like
you
Boogeyman's not that kind of story. It worked okay. I just thought it was a weird mix.
it's interesting you said that because I was just talking about like how horror definitely has its uh places and like timelines, right? Like the trends happen every couple years and they go
Sure.
away and they come.
Yeah.
There's a new
Cycles and
one.
peaks and
So
valleys,
like the J
etc.
Sure. Yeah.
horror of the early 2000s, and then it went into like found footage again, and then like, and I was just saying like the recent trend, but it sounds like now it's a hybrid of it, and is like elevated horror is what I would say. That term
Oh
would be
yeah.
like that's the high everyone's chasing, but half of that actually is what you're saying. This like curse horror trend is like
Well, a lot
most
of
of
those
those
elevated,
elevated
yeah,
are
a lot of those elevated horror movies were just like taking the J, like It Follows is
yeah.
the
Exactly.
best example, where it's like
It's
that's another one that's just a J horror curse movie. They
yeah.
just tweaked it.
So I love that you brought it up just because like literally was given this rundown of like word vomiting for 3 minutes at a coworker of like here's the history of horror from from 70s to 2003. And the J horror was where we got hung up on. I'm like, no, you got to go back and look. And it was like that, and like torture porn and bad studio horror. And I was like,
Right.
we're
And
kind of
there's
back.
always like different stuff going on at once.
Yeah,
But I feel
Yeah.
like
but
that just like horror movies where people are cursed and there's a bunch of like rules that they got to figure out. And it's usually like it's often a woman and often like a journalist, or she's investigating like the origin. Like, I got to find the first person who was cursed, and then the reason that they
Yeah,
were
they always
cursed. And
have
then,
that element too, where they go back and find the
Uh,
person who's also dealing with it, and like
right,
that's in
it's
all of them.
trying.
who was the first wet dead girl that gave rise to the
I just watched.
You
phenomenon?
got to go find Brian Cox before he electrocutes
Right, yeah.
himself.
Oh, yeah, it's always a variation on that.
I just watched the Grudge, the American Grudge the other day. Just throw it on. Oh, that movie's so boring and so bad. But I was talking about it, and I was like, not even the Grudge. I said, yeah, The Ring has creepy moments, but it's basically became an episode of like CSI eventually by plot beats, or like a detective show that you watch just
Yeah.
with a haunted girl.
Well, that's
Like,
the thing. Those American J horror and ripoffs always added a half hour for no reason, so they lost like they don't
yeah.
move the same. They feel a little they feel a little slow now.
Just
I think part of
Bill
it too is,
Paxton jumping
yeah,
off a bridge, or Bill Pullman.
there is a challenge of adapting, like sometimes, especially Japanese movies, because the Japanese, they don't have the same like. Americans have this like charging, like we want the narrative to be like really fast, and every
Hmm.
scene links together, and this leads to that, leads to that, leads to that, A to B to C to D, and then that's the end of the story. And like the moment you deviate from that, American audiences start to lose patience. Like, well, what's going on? This doesn't, this sex scene is not necessary for the plot. And I feel like Japanese audiences don't have that. You can introduce like four different stories, and maybe they'll
Well,
eventually interconnect, or you can introduce a character, and sometimes it's very episodic. They go do this, they go have this adventure, they go have that. Like Branded to Kill, I remember the first time I watched that, it was very frustrating because it's like, well, okay, you meet this character and he's got this overarching need, but then it's all like 20-minute things. He has to go deal with this, and then he has to go deal with this, and this
yeah,
might not have anything to do with what he was already doing. And I think that makes it harder to adapt these stories, because I
I'm
think the Japanese are more patient about like, okay, this will all link together. It's about a mood. It's about
uh,
establishing tone. And Americans like, we don't give a shit about that. We just want to know what happens. What happens?
Just
we
give
need
me
the payoff.
tell me what's gonna happen next.
Right.
That your point is, that is why I'm so glad to this day we never got a remake of Audition, which I think, that's a top. I mean, it's pretty beat to death now, but that's like a top 3 J horror, like legendary movie. Does that though? It's just, the first hour is a rom com of that movie, and then you're just
Right.
like, wait a minute. So
Yeah, a lot of Takashi Miike, where it's just like, because they keep talking about Ichi the Killer too, and they want to do a U.S. version of that, but it's kind of the same.
it's
It's
not
like,
gonna
well, this
work.
part is about this, and this, but it's from different characters' perspectives, even, and like, I don't know,
Let's just have
Americans
Spike
just
Lee
won't.
make
Yeah,
Cold Boy again.
right. Americans just don't. They won't tolerate that stuff.
No.
Koreans
Speak,
are more like us. I feel like Korean movies are
that is
very
a
like,
Korean
okay,
film. Yeah.
he's got to get there. He's gonna go there, and then he's gonna punch that guy really hard.
A lot more Western influence, and like, I mean, you could even see that in like the common one of the mainstream one of like Bong Joon-ho stuff, right? Like, it's
Right.
pretty like palpable, and but yeah, no, they're super great. We got to cover some J horror more on this show, Brian. So we picked Infinity Pool, and I think this stemmed from like a conversation the 3 of us were kind of having on Twitter, and then like months later we were like, Lon, you want to talk about Infinity Pool?
Probably. That
um
sounds right.
so or anything to add? Apologies. Anything to add, guys, that you wanted to recommend? Or yeah, I think we're in a good spot.
No, we're
Yeah.
good. We can start the movie now.
Yeah, so I'll read the synopsis just to see if it's accurate to what we watch. And as you guys know, I have not read it yet. Guided by a seductive and mysterious woman, a couple on vacation venture outside the resort grounds and find themselves in a culture filled with violence, hedonism, and untold horror. A tragic accident soon leaves them facing a zero tolerance policy for crime. Either you'll be executed, or if you're rich enough to afford it, you can watch yourself die instead. That's pretty weak synopsis. I feel like kind of all over the place with that one.
Well, it's just like the very base level, you know what I mean? And it's hard for Google to give a synopsis of what this movie's really about. You know what I mean?
It's a hard one to
get into
explain.
that, probably.
It's a hard one to explain. So I know just from our conversations too, like Lon and myself watched the theatrical cut, which is on Hulu. And Brian, you said you went ahead.
The first time I watched the theatrical cut, and then I noticed that the uncut version was on Canopy. And if I'm being completely honest, I think it was mostly just like
sex stuff, right?
Slightly more graphic sexual elements to some of the, especially during like the orgy scenes, and not even like showing a lot, but like what was like involved in some of the like kind of flashing images and things that were like morphing into each other.
Yeah.
And I think also the surprise hand job is a little bit more graphic in that.
You know what?
One.
I think
but if you've been on Pornhub, you've seen everything that Infinity Pool was going to show you.
Gotcha. I think I did watch the director's cut the first time because I watched it online, from the spot, and I was like, I couldn't tell, but yeah, that hand. I don't remember that hand job being a little longer.
This is a Brandon Cronenberg thing because Possessor also has an uncut version that's not really very different, and it's mostly again during the like freak out psychedelic montage sequences. Anyway, there's like he puts slightly more graphic imagery in there, but it goes by so quickly, it's almost like you don't fully register what you're seeing. Even.
Gotcha. So, Lon, you were just saying earlier, we're talking about Brandon Cronenberg. So this is David Cronenberg's son, Brandon Cronenberg, who's you said made Possessor. I've only seen Possessor, but he's kind of following his father's footsteps a bit with the
interesting ways.
It's not.
Well, I actually was interested to see what everybody thought comparatively. I mean, obviously, there's a huge body of work from David Cronenberg, but like I've just recently watched Dead Ringers and Videodrome for the first time, both.
Oh, wow.
And while I enjoyed them and stuff, I find
we froze.
Well, I enjoy Brandon Cronenberg's movies, and it feels like he's kind of starting out from, his father has become this sort of respected, world-renowned art film festival kind of filmmaker, and he's following in those footsteps.
Yeah.
And that's a very different way to start your career.
Yeah.
Than David Cronenberg, who was making grade Z freak out, low budget, splatterhouse horror movies. And I think what makes David Cronenberg's, especially that transitional, like the Fly, Dead Zone, Videodrome era, the Brood, the Furious Bride of Palma. What makes that era so interesting is that transition. That like it's this guy who's got this command of low budget filmmaking, of gross out filmmaking, of gore hound sort of filmmaking, but he's a thoughtful, smart guy.
He's using that, but he's making real art with it. Like he's not just doing splatter movies. I agree.
I don't think anything in Brandon's oeuvre yet matches like the climactic stuff from The Fly or Videodrome, or where he really marries those two worlds in ways that are very weird and very effective and singular. Like there's no other horror filmmaker whose movies feel like that era of Cronenberg.
Yeah,
this is the closest thing I'd say to like a Videodrome, just from like thematics of like sexuality and imagery and stuff.
It's interesting. I mean, they both obviously have, in some ways, there's body horror elements to what both of them are doing, but I do feel like that's way more like I don't know. I think Brandon's more of a like social commentary, satirical kind of guy, and I feel like that's David Moore is really hung up on like the existential terror of having a body and
I think that's more what I meant when I was talking about like focus is like Brandon Cronenberg's clearly like got something he's trying to say and he's like pointing in a specific direction. Where like I feel like David Cronenberg's just like, here's some ideas. Look at some crazy. Think about some crazy shit and think about what it means to like be a human being in a body and whatever. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
bodies are weird,
I
folks.
do think it's more coherent than bodies are weird. But sure, I mean it is it's very different, and I feel like Brandon, like it's a lot of face stuff. Like it's even less like body horror. I mean, I guess a little bit like Possessor definitely has that, like, what does it mean to be like a mind in a body and how those two things are connected. But all Brandon Cronenberg's movies are really, it's about like people with messed up, morphed, freakish faces, and how like even a small tweak to your face makes you look like a monster, and like how we're so used to like faces can look very different and diverse, but there are certain things that you can't change or else immediately it's very wrong. And I like that element of it, but it does feel very different than what David is getting at.
Yeah, no,
it's funny that he, like you said, he feels like he's making it, like he's building on, like starting from the more art house version of what people see, but also like, I don't know, doing something different with it too, I guess, you know what I mean? Like he's starting from a place of a more...
It's cool to see also, like,
good nepotism.
He's becoming a voice for, like, his country of a Canadian filmmaker, too. Like, there's very few of them that are having this impact around and, like, having crossed the board right now and being like, no, I'm going to stay in Canada. Because I heard Matt Johnson from Nirvana, the band The Show, he just made Blackberry.
Oh, yeah.
He mentioned, like, essentially, I guess, their director's class being, like, using Brendan Cronenberg as like an example of like, it's me and him and a few others just trying to do more and stay here and do that. So I thought that was really
the
neat.
Canadian film industry.
Well, because it is, I mean, there are like English speaking countries that are not the US. The moment you have, you know, a little taste of international success, there is a lot of pressure to like, well, just go to Hollywood now. I've heard Australian filmmakers talk about this a lot.
Oh my
like,
God.
There's a real lack of mature Australian filmmaking because those guys all pull a Peter Weir the moment they get a little international attention. It's like, well, I'm going to go make Master Commander, you know, like, why am I going to hang around in Perth and make Perth budgets when I could go to the US and make America budgets?
We can only hope that.
So I think that's probably the same thing in Canada, especially because they're so close. It's like you could drive to.
Come on over.
You make you direct a couple episodes of the X-Files, and then the next thing you know, or whatever, you know, whatever's working up there.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You do your first feature, and you get your boots under you, and then you go to Hollywood.
A little more. So they did film this one though in Croatia. So, but anyway,
I do like that because it's like I like that he makes it impossible to tell even what part of the world this fictional country is in. At first, you sort of assume it's like South America.
That was my assumption.
But then I was thinking like Greece, maybe also.
Right, but then they all have kind of Eastern European act. Like he obviously used a lot of Croatian locals in some of the bit parts and whatever. So like the people don't seem South American. But then like Thomas Kretschmann, who's a German guy, is their government representative. There's just no way to know where we are in the world.
Tolkwa.
Latolka, right?
Latolka, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we do start off, right? This couple, this clearly like yuppie couple in this resort, or down on
Patrick
vacation.
Coleman also in Cobweb, right?
Yes.
She's
the very bad substitute teacher who makes all the wrong moves.
Oh, yeah, you gotta watch.
I know her from Last Man on Earth. She was on Last Man on Earth, the Will Forte show.
Which was just so, like, the voice. I was like, why do I could just hear her voice. I'm like, how do I fucking wonder? I was like, oh yeah, 45 episodes or whatever of Last Man on Earth.
Yeah,
but yeah, she is in Cobweb too. So.
Yeah, she plays a terrible substitute teacher who tries to do the right thing but makes
makes every mistake.
She needed
a classic horror movie helper.
Two phone calls, and that movie just doesn't happen.
Could have really solved some stuff pretty easily, but just does not do anything right.
But it's her and God, I mess up every Skarsgård. Alexander. I was gonna say Alexander. I saw myself. It's not even a bit. I generally mess up all the Skarsgårds. So they're on vacation and they meet a different couple, vacation friends, right? This is the opposite side version of that Hulu movie.
That'd be a great crossover. They should just make that. Or the vacation friends go to this resort and like you get a bunch of John Cena clones running around and whatnot.
I feel like Brandon Cronenberg must have gone on some kind of vacation, and this makes a observation that I feel like everybody who's been to this kind of resort has felt this way, where when you go to a place that's like not supposedly safe outside of the boundaries of where you're visiting, and it's this weird feeling as a tourist to be like, I'm here, but I'm not really here. Like, I'm not really experiencing what this place is really about. I'm getting only the filtered like tourist version because I'm at the resort. And like I went on a few years ago. My uncle treated the family to a Caribbean cruise for a week, where you go to like St. Kitts and St. Martin, and then Costa Rica, and then back in like a week. But you know, you don't really go to those places. You land, and then you go to a port, and then they take you to a beach, and they sell you some expensive cocktails, and then they take you back to the boat, and you're gone. You don't see like the island of St. Kitts and who's really living there and what's really happening there. So I feel like not a lot of movies that I've seen have really tapped into that specific feeling or vibe.
It feels like it immediately. Like
there's a little moment I was on my second watch. There's a great little moment they just loved when that guy on the ATV, drives on the beach. He's like running over. They cut to Alexander Skarsgård and his shocked little face of like, oh, he's like literally clutching his pearls. It's so funny. A little bit of the real world broke in here. Ooh, scary.
And that's his first fucking red flag, though. Where I go when it's like, oh no, we're gonna take the car out. The catalyst where we get it. I'm just like these morons. I'm sorry, you go away to those resorts, not to be like, well, we're just going to do our own thing, because it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, but no,
and also they make it like there's multiple compounds, like they kind of make mention of.
They kept mentioning it's all kind of a connected kind of.
Right, there's another resort, but it really is kind of like that.
That's like, I was in Jamaica a couple years ago for a destination wedding, and it was the same thing. You're in your resort, there's a bunch of different resorts.
Right. Because even in Hawaii, which is not like, it's safe, you could go anywhere, but even that is like, well, there's this cluster of resorts, and then you got to drive like 40 minutes around to get to the next cluster of resorts.
We went on an excursion, so you're out of the thing, but because you got to get somewhere for the boat. And I remember being like, well, I'm just going to run across the street to the local shop to buy like a hat or something, right? And immediately being like, having a thought of what am I doing in this as an alone American about to go on the excursion? What am I doing in this shop buying a hat with more money than I'm sure I need on me, and getting back over to the resort? But like, oh, cool, not resort, but like the excursion.
But yeah, so I like that this movie is kind of plays into that feeling and that anxiety and like exploring it, and the ultimate result too being the people he really had to fear were not the Tolkiens, not the people living on this island or in this country, but the people he was with, from the resort that were sending out into Latolka.
And
of all the different like I'm rich and now I'm in a crazy situation movies that came out this last year or two, this one is the only one that kind of tapped into that. And there's been a lot of them.
Yeah,
there's a lot of Eat the Rich movies out right now, last few years.
But I feel like this one too, it understands the allure, and so it's not purely like rich people are horrible. I mean, it is.
Oh no.
But it's also about how they seduce him and how he finds himself drawn into this world over the course of an hour or whatever.
Yeah, speaking of that, so they get there. He's an author. He has like one book he's written. He clearly has no more ideas, and we've already set up that he's also married rich. Like, he wasn't a rich author; he's married rich. And but Mia Goth is basically just like, and they do give off like swinger vibes, her and her husband immediately, like. But they're like, oh my God, you're I'm not gonna remember these people's names. You're so and so author.
Oh, James Foster.
James Foster.
Such a sucky baby.
James.
James. I love your book, this and that. So he's gonna be like, yeah, we gotta hang out with these people. And like, I don't know if you guys have been away like that and have had like vacation friends before, but there is that level of like, do we follow them? Not out of the resort, but like, we should try to get together and like follow them around. Like, me and my wife have had that before. We're like,
or you like start bumping into people multiple places, and then you're like, okay, well, we'll just they seem
we'll
nice,
hang
and
for
we're
a bit.
always
We'll have a
going to
few
the same spots
drinks.
anyway. Like,
And then
But
there's always
also, I mean, they're also building up like right away. They've established. He does a really good job of establishing a lot of these character dynamics. You know, in a pretty subtle way with shorthand. He's a good writer.
Yeah,
Because like
absolutely.
you get like there's that initial where they're having breakfast and she wants to go do an activity or go to town and he's like, I don't care. He's very very out of it. I barely says two words to her the whole beginning of the movie. And then as soon as these rich people who are impressed by him and he's attracted to the woman
He
are
kind of
like,
like
hey,
comes to life. Yeah,
we're gonna go to this dumb Chinese place. 2 minutes ago, he said he had no way. Like, why would they have a Chinese place in Latolka, whatever? Now he's suddenly engaged and interested. So it's like we're kind of learning a lot about this relationship that he has with his wife, I guess.
yes.
Yeah, his partner of 10 years that they've been together for 10 years. And, he's bored. They're bored of each other. He no longer has to perform for her or make her feel entertained or enraptured. And
yeah.
then, but this new person and this new opportunity brings him suddenly, to life and gets him engaged. And I think I think that's a lot of what the movie is about. Like, there are all of these ideas about rich and poor and about power dynamics and whatever. But I do think it's also just about that like when you are not rich but you're in a world surrounded by wealth and privilege, it's very easy to
You
get
get allured and wrapped into it.
seduced by it and to start believing that you belong there and whatever you'd have to do to stay would be justified. It's got like a talented Mr. Ripley sort of vibe to it almost. That's the same thing he experiences, that like, well, but now I've been here for so long, it would be cruel to expect me to go back to the world of the plebs,
Live like a poor again. Ugh,
right?
Ugh,
Exactly.
gross.
I did love the scene where Mia Goth is talking about her job as the commercial actor, and she's basically doing Janine Garofalo from Mr. Show. She's like, Bag Hutch, help me.
Right. There has to be a better way.
Yeah, I love it.
You're like, oh wow, what a great actress you are. She's like, I know, I'm really good. Yeah, they do that, and then
I love that one with Janine Garofalo where it's like the test to determine if you have a headache. That was an old Saturday Night Live bit she was on. She was like, in only 5 minutes, I'll know if I have a headache. Oh God, I'm in agony.
That was good.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No,
you're good. It's your
Garofalo fan. There should be more Garofalo talk on the pod. Actually,
more
I
Garofalo.
think
her
time for Wet
cameo
Hot
in
American Summer.
Sopranos.
Yeah. From the Ben Stiller Show to Wet Hot American Summer, I celebrate her whole oeuvre.
To playing herself in The Sopranos.
Oh,
Yeah.
Was it Outlaw Lesbians?
Oh yeah, that movie. I just rewatched The Sopranos. Not to get off topic, I've just did a rewatch of The Sopranos, and now I'm listening to Pod Yourself a Gun slowly. I'm not in a big rush or anything, but oh man, so that episode, the movie they're making looks just awful. It's so terrible.
Hey, Christopher is enamored by that movie.
Cleaver, on the other hand,
a classic.
Cleaver looks excellent.
Brilliant. It's like Saw.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, so we have these scenes, we set up all the characters, and like you said, these little things kind of roll through the dynamics of them, and they go to a beach and they borrow a car from a local or like a resort.
They leave the compound, which you're not supposed to do. Big no.
And I mean, literally, my first note is they're on the beach, they're eating, and I just write. And the biggest thing is they could have done the same thing at the resort. Like, they're not doing anything different. They're just sitting on a beach, drinking wine and like eating cheese. Like it's. And anyway, they have that. They get drunk.
Turkish sausage, right?
Yes. I can't have another one. Like, they have enough there where he has like a hot plate and a skillet. Like, they prepared.
Frying up sausages.
But get drunk. Mia Goth Mia Goth jerks him off. Well, his wife goes away. Mia Goth, just
surprise hand job.
seduces Skarsgård when his wife and her husband assumably go away, and he's just silent and kind of freaked out the whole right away, all drunk. He decides, I'll drive back. I'm good enough. His lights go out, and they hit a kid, or they hit not a kid, a worker.
He's like a farmer,
a local farmer, yeah. And they do a hit and run, basically. They get back to the resort. They're all like, what the fuck did you do?
Well, yeah, like Mia Goth and her husband basically are like, you can't go to the police,
Yeah, they tell them
you'll get murdered,
You're in a foreign country.
Like, you have to do a hit. This has to be a hit and run.
And they're playing on this couple's fears about Latolka, about this foreign country, this backwards. She's like, they're gonna rape you. The cops are gonna rape you, and then they're gonna kill you, and you can't. There's no justice in Latolka. So they're really playing. They're the criminals. They're the ones who
they know what to do.
Wrongs.
I mean, like the spoiler of this is right. Like later on, like Mia Goth's like, I can't even believe how stupid we didn't have to set you up for a crime.
Right.
Like they were planning on.
Later on, the reveal is right that they purposefully picked him to be like a plaything and to manipulate him and to get him in trouble and just to see.
But then he got himself in trouble anyway, and they didn't even have to do it.
Right. But I do think like that there throughout the movie, there's constantly these references to playing on Western and American fears about the other and the dusky, dangerous foreigners who are just waiting around every corner to take advantage and to rob us and to kill us and all of this talk. It reminded me a little bit. I went to Peru years ago and took a trip, and then I saw a thread recently that was like, no one would ever go to South America as a tourist alone. You'd have to be crazy. And it's like I went with my girlfriend, but we weren't around each other 24/7. Like I walked places alone when we were there, and it didn't like there are certain parts of certain neighborhoods you don't go to, but
there's neighborhoods in here that you don't get to.
Exactly, just like Los Angeles, there's neighborhoods, and so that's what I was saying. But like Americans just like foundationally have this belief that we're the only safe part of the world, and anywhere else, the moment you leave your house, you're just opening yourself up to get robbed or murdered or whatever. And I think this movie definitely has that element to it of like they're easy to manipulate because they're baseline scared of this place, even though it doesn't really. I mean, obviously they have some crazy laws, but it doesn't really seem superficially that.
Although honestly, when you break down the laws too, rich people can use their wealth to avoid consequences. They don't sound that crazy anymore.
Right. It's not that different.
Well,
sounds very plausible, actually.
One of like the biggest notes on here too, speaking of like rich, then that's how it operates is, why does this government they just keep letting these people stay and live and just keep fucking with everything? It's so, the money. So having said all that, when he wakes up in the morning, because you immediately also notice like, no, that night, get yourself to the airport, right? Just get back and be like, I got to take a cab. I'm going to the, like, that's at least what I would do if I did a hit and run in a foreign country. And
we're leaving right now.
We're leaving. I don't care. We're not going to bed. We broke the rules of the resort. Who gives a fuck?
I gotta go.
But they don't do that. The police are immediately at the door in the morning, come see me, and they bring him to this, essentially what looks like also a grimy insane asylum, right? They put him in the white gown, his wife comes with him, and Mia Goth and her husband are nowhere to be found, too, during this whole thing.
Well, yeah, you get the cops are there basically because they gave him up immediately.
They ratted him out. They ratted him out. And even the cops play on it, though, because they do when they're interrogating him, they're like, oh, well, your wife just spilled the beans on everything when it was just the good cop, bad cop thing. And he's like, she did that. And Skarsgård is just like, I mean, I don't know how any of us would react in this situation, but they do really like to fill in that this is a very pathetic man. He's a broken, like, quiet guy, but they basically reveal
just that scared, like they're just so, you know what I mean? They're so terrified, so it's like easy to manipulate,
Yeah, they reveal to him that he The good news is he could get out of this, right? This country has cloning technology.
And also they say later that nobody's been able to replicate this, so somehow this weird country that's like
red goo,
like it's like supposedly this like all nearly third world-ish kind of like outside the walls of these resorts. It's supposed to be all kind of like backwards, but yet they have this like perfect cloning technology that only exists here. I like that.
Yeah,
that's fun.
There's a line, and this is a very Cronenberg element. There's a line of dialogue that one of the guys has where it's like, other countries are too technical. They're too scientific in their approach. And Latolka is creative about cloning, artistic about it, or whatever. We don't ever find out what that means, but it's kind of like, it's less sci-fi and more fantasy at that point.
I will say that
really
I like
is not like it's not a realistic thing. It's like a magical realist element.
I like that their cloning facility still had the kind of like spa aesthetic that like a resort, like an old. It felt like that was an old resort where they were doing the actual experiments and stuff.
That's on purpose.
The chamber that they end up putting him in, there's like these weird Eastern European like tile pattern by it, like you'd expect in like a Polish person's kitchen or something.
Yeah,
right, which it does not look like scientific. Like if this were an American sci-fi movie, it would be all white. It would look like an Apple store in there.
Yeah, it feels like you said, like a bathroom of an old mansion or something.
Right. It's very non-scientific, because again, like the idea that this is not really technology. This is magic. Hang on.
No worries. Sorry, guys.
Taco wanted to get down up.
Good. Hi, Taco. Glad we got to see Taco.
Good Taco.
But the world too is like they did such a great job of making it look like lived in the purposes. Like I didn't even think of that of this, the resort, that the jail was an old resort. And
I just got that feeling of like they're doing the cloning, but it feels like a spa treatment. They're putting him in like almost like
the
white and gown stuff, and like
it's fascinating that they've made Latolka in a lot of ways like kind of they've coded it otherworldly, where there's just something unnatural about it. Even like that the shot that they use in the trailer when you're first there and you're sort of tipping over 360, like you're seeing normal imagery but upside down or from weird angles, and it's kind of constantly reinforcing this idea that like there are elements of it that are familiar, but in a weird, everything is kind of off somehow. There's one more line of dialogue I was going to bring up. At one point when they think they're going to go kidnap the jailer or the warden, whoever the public official they've been dealing with.
He's supposed to be getting a surgery or something. They're going to go snatch him. Their plan is to kidnap him.
He's having treatment done at Latolka Brain and Spine. That's the name of the clinic where they're picking, which is a bizarre, like not like those are things we have. Like there are clinics in America where you go
brain and spine,
neurological clinics or whatever, but they wouldn't call it like. It wouldn't be like Los Angeles Brain and Spine.
No, that's a weird. It's a Tim Robinson location.
Right. It's like a 50s. Yeah. It's like a larger than life. So yeah, I think Latolka just as a setting is like it's kind of fantastical. It's like there's a magical realist element to it.
The locals. Speaking of that, also they all have this. Have like every age this. I guess tattoo or makeup under their
like
eyes.
Paint. They put it on in the ceremony.
They're talking about during the ceremony at the beginning, right? With the same thing with the masks.
The masks are very like
cultural. They put
the little element that they're like, these are our ceremonial masks. Also, you can buy one in the gift shop. Just check those out.
That's straight up just like Hawaii. When you're in Hawaii, they're constantly doing like, this is an ancient, sacred Polynesian ritual, and like, here, try it, $5. It's like it's the most insulting, ridiculous. Yeah.
Do that, and then so this is where I guess there is no answer of it, and you guys might be like, how the hell did you read into this? But so when they get cloned, and then basically you get to watch your clone get killed by, and if you committed a murder, this at least the first one, the guy's son kills clone Skarsgård. But this whole
government sanctioned vengeance,
this whole time,
very official.
I'm thinking, and they kind of reinforced the second time I watched it too, that they're throwing out your old version of you, and that's who's dying. And your clone's the one who gets to live with like less of your memories, and it's more dumbed down. Because that's how, at least for me, Skarsgård has been playing it the whole time.
Like, he seems like he's getting duller as the movie goes on.
Because the way he
well, they
cries
definitely address
out,
that. They have that conversation, you know,
the way he
the
Yeah,
first
the
night.
guy says, like, what do you think? Do you think that you're still the original you, or
Yeah.
are you the copy?
Right, they talk
Yeah.
about it a little bit, and then, you
yeah,
know.
because the way he cries out, M,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's him. He just
But
went through surgery.
But they're identical, though. Like, it
Yeah,
wouldn't,
they're
it
identical,
wouldn't
right.
matter, because the one who's being killed still has the mind of the other
Yeah, that's
one.
what I mean.
So
It's a very, I guess it doesn't matter, like, if we swapped out, but there was no, but I don't know. I felt like parts were being lost.
But you're
and,
saying, is it multiplicity rules? Is Stellan Skarsgård getting dumber each
yeah,
time?
it's what it feels
every time
like.
they do a copy of the guy. Well, it does. There is another element that I think comes in later, which is like, it is kind of also a doppelganger movie on some level. Like, it's creating the tension of, well, is he willing to exist in a world where there are multiples of him? Because then
Mhm.
later they're just freelance on their own making new Skarsgårds. Like, at some point
yeah.
they stop asking him. It stops being in response to a crime, and they get the formula, and they start cooking them up and paying for them on their own. And I think that's a totally different level of like existential dilemma of like, if there is a double of you that's not being killed, well, now there's just two of you in this world. Like, does that concern you? I mean, you're going to go back home and live your own life. So what if there was another one of you in Latolka living as a dog? But it introduces that tension of like,
Yeah.
in some ways he has to kill these other copies, because then otherwise it's creating this even larger lingering trauma.
There's a Simpsons episode about this.
Yeah,
Of course
right.
there
I mean,
is.
but but that's just like that general, like that Lynchian, like
No,
doppelganger panic of like, what if there were more of you?
What would you do? Yeah, and I mean, that's even his.
Well, how would you have a sense of self if there was another you wandering around out there doing things?
I mean, that's when the scene you're talking about, right? And we're jumping around here and all that, and that's all good. Is
Let's jump.
That scene, right, which they bring out dog Skarsgård, and then he freaks out after beating the shit out of him.
Well, there's two, because there's one where they tell him that they're beating up this warden or whatever,
and then they reveal.
Oh my god, you're right.
They've been beating up a version of him.
That's the thing I'm thinking of, and then that's when Mia Goth
he ends
is
up,
like,
and then later there's another one that is the dog him.
Yeah, I'm switching it up, because then Mia Goth is just like, with no concern in the world, honestly, she's like, you both could fuck me if you want. That'd be pretty cool.
And that's just like these hedonists that he's fallen in with, like, that's just another taboo for them that has slipped away, you know? Like they're joking about doing sodomy in that one scene when they're all like hanging out and drinking, like, guess which one of us got arrested for sodomy, like, which is an example of like an old taboo that people used to have, that rich people on vacation would get rid of, you know, and like they're doing drugs and so for them, making a double and then murdering it or having sex with it and then killing it, that's just another
thing to do.
That's the thing they've all already experienced. Now they're to the point where they're getting at their new experiences to force that on an unsuspecting person.
They're and she's literally calling him pathetic when he can't deal with it. She's like, "Don't be pathetic, James."
Yeah, like, oh, we all went through it, James. You big wuss, you big baby,
baby.
James, such a sucky baby.
And I think that's
so good in this.
One of the really provocative things about the movie is like, well, but maybe that might be true of just about anything. If you inundated yourself into it, if you did it a few times, if you got used to it, if you were around other people who were like, that's fine, you could probably grow accustomed to a lot of things that you would normally think are disgusting or deviant.
What can be normalized and what can be, what can you be desensitized to, and
just like he becomes to this experience over a few
I mean, she really is, in that regard, all that though, is like, whatever the dark fantasy manic pixie dream girl version is, that's who Mia Goth is supposed to be, right? Just like she's
the magic demon death girl.
I mean, that's true, but I think that, I mean, again, that's also what's so what's so I think provocative about the movie in some ways is that there's the turn. So for most of the movie, you think she's like James's friend, and they met on vacation, and she's just like introducing him to this weird dark world.
Yeah, they do
And
the
then there's
drugs, have some
and then there's a turn
sex.
where it becomes then there's a turn where it becomes obvious that like, oh no, she's fucking with him, and she's an enemy, and she's been abusing him this whole time.
But
But
there's
then,
also a bit of the movie where we have realized that and he hasn't.
Yes,
Right.
And
I
that's
think we realized that
uncomfortable,
earlier.
you know?
Yeah.
And
but then I think almost any other filmmaker would have left it there. Like either he gets away, or he gets his revenge, or he gets killed, or whatever, end of movie. And I think what's so fascinating about this one is that he gives you that there's another turn where it's like, well, no, she wasn't really a nemesis anyway. She was just on vacation. This is literally just what they do.
they go back to normal.
And then the morning they get up to go to the airport, it's just like leaving any other vacation where, well,
the
you're done with all
banality
that
of evil, you know?
yeah, you're getting your bags and going back home. And she wasn't really like, she didn't hate him. Her husband says, hey, I hope we see you back here next year, and means it. It's not a joke. That's probably how they all became friends, is they all experienced this together and had a wild week, and then
a year later we're like, I think I'm ready to do that again.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what makes it, because you can, and then James doesn't leave. I mean, when we leave, he's back on the beach.
Shot.
So the idea that he is going to be back next, he is now one of them, and
or
did get
that he's so broken he can never go back to his normal life.
That's what I took it like.
Or like, both. I mean, but it's sort of both. Like, but he will go back to his.
He's definitely never
going
to be the same.
But right, he has been broken, and he will have to keep going back there and doing this because now he's obsessed with it. Like,
and that's one thing I glossed over too, is like his wife left. She waited for the week because he played a game. He's like, I can't find my passport because he was so enticed in this and that. We later learn it's taped underneath the sink. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going. You just stayed up all night. God did God knows what. And now there's two of these urns. Because when you get cloned, they cremate the body, you get an urn.
I think the urn would make any horror fan who needs a decoration for their home, one of those urns would be great. It's nice. It's a real simplistic design, very classy.
Oh, infinity pool decoration?
Yeah.
Oh, if
you got that next to your little lament configuration,
don't
you got
worry.
your little horror knickknacks.
Don't worry. If this wasn't a Neon movie and this was an A24 movie, they would be trying to sell you those urns for like
and the
$95.
masks. If this was A24, they'd be selling you the masks.
Yeah, the masks.
Yeah, that more likely.
I'd get that one with I like the one with the coins in the mouth. I was a big fan of that one.
But yeah, they bring him back that one night, and that's like the first night too, right? They go rough up the people at the house and accidentally shoot, or not. Nothing seems like an accident, but they shoot someone, and they're like, "Oh shit!" But they're all just bumbling around drunk, like you said, like just keep kind of that fun, like when you do dumb shit,
consequence free,
Yeah, consequence free.
I do like the little twist they do on that one where they do the fake out and you think it's actually they're really going to get killed this time, and then it cuts to there and the audience clapping and watching themselves all get killed.
They're having fun with it.
That was a great little. I mean, you kind of can see it coming, but I think it still works really well.
I think
it's the only moment where it drives home the cruelty, because it's not from the rest of it is from their perspective, and they don't care. They're very cavalier about these lives.
It's like we were talking about, if they have the exact same memories, they think they're the original, so to them it is all very real. They are having that experience.
That's our only chance as viewers to really experience like how awful this is from every other perspective but theirs. And so I think you need to have that moment, but framing it as a surprise I think is very effective.
And it is when we get our first like crazy Mia Goth face, one of like 5 in this movie, of her shooting a gun and just like laughing maniacally.
Mia Goth are maybe the first naturally occurring scream queen we've had in a really long time, like where her ascent to like her place in horror feels like it came nice and natural, and not like, Jenna Ortega feels a little forced with the Scream thing and Wednesday and like the promotion.
She like a little boring.
Thank you. Yeah.
Like
no, she is.
She, like I don't hate her. She's not bad. She was good as Wednesday Addams, I guess. But like, she doesn't stand out as a presence in those movies enough to be our new Scream Queen. Like, you got to make the whole thing with Scream Queen is you only have a few minutes. You got to make an impression.
I was always under the impression the other girl was the star of the new Scream movies, her sister, and that she was like the secondary kind of. It wasn't until Wednesday came out and everybody's like Jenna Ortega. I was like, oh really? That's she's
just in horror.
Didn't do much for me. Sorry.
Yeah, she's just in a bunch of horror.
But no, Mia Goth naturally, and it's interesting if you look, they're all kind of like, they're not typecasting, but they're all like, except for we're talking about Mia Goth, like erotic horror too, right? Like I mean, Nymphomaniac isn't horror, but Nymphomaniac to X to Pearl to Maxine to now this, she has this through line.
Oh, and she's in. Isn't she in Cure for
Wellness?
Wellness.
But
she's a beautiful girl, and she's not. She's clearly not. She's really open about her sexuality to the point where, like, she's interested in pursuing those roles and stuff.
Yeah, there's
she gravitates toward that sort of stuff. So
that wasn't a knock, just super different from your average Scream Queen. But yeah, the Jenna Ortega thing is. I said that to someone once, and they looked like I shot their mom in the face, and I was like, that's just kind of forced upon us.
Yeah, it just feels like a real Evanescence situation. Like, here's a band that we produced for you to like, and
we could all go out and pretend to be Winona Ryder in Beetlejuice and wear black and be like, see. But yeah, no. So in an Infinity Pool, though, we're going through it, and I don't know, just crazier and crazier shit gets going, and especially when they introduce that drug. And there is some imagery that has stuck with me throughout the year of seeing this movie, and especially that pulsating out nipple, that talking out, it lives in my brain as...
Well, that's an interesting thing about that. Some things we see in that psychedelic trip out sequence are prophetic, because that sort of references how he sucks on her boob at the end of the movie, but that hasn't happened yet.
Is a little baby.
He's seeing visions of things that have not yet happened during his psychedelic freak out as well. Again, like a magical realist element to the movie, like things in La Tolka that are not physically possible elsewhere in the world can happen in La Tolka.
He also, he also in those visions too, like said, haven't happened in the world. The one that also sticks with me so much too is later on in when he sees his wife again, right? Because she's not part of it. She's really not part of anything, and he sees her in those sequences as, oh my God, you were in on this the whole time in one of those visions.
Yeah, he has some fantasies or some nightmares that she's a part of, right?
Right. And that's I don't know, that's always freaky when it's someone you've trusted and thought about.
Well, he's feeling he's dealing with guilt there because of all the weird shit he's so of course she's gonna show up to kind of represent that in a way, I think. And
and also I'm re-looking at my notes too, the visuals and the fantasies and orgies. Didn't it also feel like when you were illegal cable streaming of the scrambly channels, Spice
trying
channels,
to watch porn through the scrambles?
Yeah, the way it's shot and filtered through, it's very is that is that a nipple or an elbow?
Well, and I was just having a weird week with nipples because I rewatched Species, and I don't know if you guys remember that. That's a Giger creation in that, and the Species creature has tentacles that come out of the nipples in a couple different places in the movie. So it seemed like there was a lot of real weird nipple stuff going on in the movies I was watching those the last couple days.
Gives life, or nourishment.
Well, but again, there's a lot of that kind of. She calls him a sucky baby also at one point. And just the idea that when we're talking about creating life without non-biologically. So I think it's, that kind of idea of everything, even the most basic biological processes are getting confused and mixed up. Like La Tolka is wrong on this very very
Well, and I mean, like,
core
when
baseline organic way, you know?
when
Like
they make the
life doesn't
first
even happen
clone,
naturally.
when they make the first clone and they go see him and he's got his face like through that's a very like
Willy Wonka
birth kind of
scene.
look, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's
but
just
like
a lot of that in it.
alien
Yeah.
birth, like not like anything
Right.
natural from this world. Exactly.
Yeah. Now can you guys explain to me why the eating and spitting of the cherries was actually the grossest thing in this fucking movie?
I figure like that might as well have been Dog James right there. He's
Right.
basically degraded to the point like he is
just
the
looks
animal
he's
already.
strung out at that,
Yeah,
but
he's so strung
it's
out.
the visually grossest scene. I mean, in the
Yeah,
sense of just like
it's
the red and they're
true.
spitting and they're. I think that right after that
Even
is my
even when you get cherries in juice, it's not that kind. They put some kind of viscous
yeah.
syrup
Yeah, it was
thingy
all
in there.
sticky and
It's gooey in an unnatural way
It's
for
the
cherries.
mostly
good.
I was just feeling for the dad because, like, you know how much money he spent to take his family on this nice resort. Now you got this asshole spitting
So that
cherry pits at him.
that's where my question of why does, even with the money they're spending, why do the resorts let these people be here? Because there's other people at these resorts paying money, and they're just like,
Yeah, but that guy in the
doesn't.
polo shirt ain't never gonna drop whatever it is, a couple $1 million and get a clone
Right.
made of himself. They need to. They're fishing for whales at this resort.
Sure,
That
sure.
guy's that guy's paying the water bill, but he ain't keeping the doors open. You know,
I
they need an
guess when you
Alexander
put it that,
Skarsgård.
I guess when you put it that way. But yeah, I just
Also, I mean, I do think it's something about the Latolkien character. You know, the Latolkiens are a very passionate people, as we learn early on. There is a sense, I think, that they are, if not enjoying this, that this is it's a lifestyle for them. Like occasionally, you murder an American tourist, and it's a thing you do.
Yeah.
it's fine. No worries about that.
You know you're going to get your restitution at least if one of these freaks does something to you or your family. You're going to get a cut. I'm sure a cut of the money they pay goes to the family, and then you also are going to get your government sanctioned vengeance on them. You know?
We also learned it's like the very end of the tourist season. Like this group plans their trips for like the tail end when it's less crowded and less people around. So maybe that's part of why.
So they can get a little crazier, probably.
Right, they wouldn't tolerate this at the peak of the tourist
peak.
season, but if you're there the last few weeks when they're emptying out anyway, sure.
And they're trying to squeeze the last couple bucks out of these guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because he extends his stay pretty much indefinitely too, so that makes sense. He's like, no, give me another month.
By the last scene, when it's pouring rain, it's the rainy season. The rest of the resort has cleared out. Yeah, he's the only one left.
He's just one of them, and I also love how impressed too. Just remembering how the rich people, when they do rob like the local government or the not local government, the people that work there, how impressed they are with all the good stuff they have, like the whiskey and the cigars. And like things they would be able to get
because
anyway.
They thought they were like backwater, some
they're like, this
third
is the
world.
good
It's
stuff.
like, oh, they actually got some nice stuff here.
Yeah, he just pulls out, I think, a bottle of like Woodward Reserve. It looked like too, like, so I don't know, there's just a lot of interesting little elements, and I know Lon, you've said it a bunch of times. It's just so well directed and such good choices in the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, then he I am really jumping here, so please interrupt me where I need to. But then
I think we're rolling. But then
but then he does try to run away after that at one point, right? And this is the don't be pathetic and so unattractive, James. They with their guns in the convertible stop his bus that's taking him to the airport. And basically,
they roll up on him like the Devil's Rejects or something. Like,
it felt like the Devil's Rejects.
They feel like the Devil's Rejects if they were like some yuppies instead of like the gross, disgusting Rob Zombie characters.
It's a great, because then they're just like that pretty long scene of her on top of the convertible, just slowly chasing him. Yeah, and just giving him the business, and then when he finally breaks down, like you said, he sucks her boob like a little baby.
Baby. They shoot him right, and he runs off, and she gets him, and then he ends up being tended to by the family of the farmer that they ran over, right?
That's what it's alluded to, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's unclear.
Well,
Some of
it's
that
unclear
stuff is
he has
fantasy.
a dream that the
He's
boy
having
is there.
but it probably that is what happened.
That's when he sees his wife and stuff.
But again, it reinforces this idea of they're not monsters. The Latolkans are not evil people. Like they're helping to care for him. It's these other Westerners that he's brought in that are the problem.
It's when he freaks out and I think starts choking who's ever over him, or we think it's the boy.
He's fantasizing that the boy who killed his double is now murdering him. But probably the line between reality and fiction by then is blurred.
When he actually comes to and they're there, they've obviously tracked him very easily. He just stumbled to the first place they followed him there, and that's when they bring him out and they bring out the dog version of James, and they're like, you basically like now prove that you deserve to be the James that lives, kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, in that point, like we later realize it's like an initiation. It's like, well, that was part of their sort of sick, weird club.
So, would this make it on the website? Does the dog die.com then?
Oh, I mean, technically, he is the dog.
No, I think it's a human dog. That doesn't count.
Doesn't count. No one's feeling too bad for
nobody
James.
cares if you can kill a human dog.
I just used that website the other day. I think that's the only reason why that note is in there. The night before, my wife and I watched the number 23 for How to Skin Day purposes, and I was like, I just want to make sure we're not watching a so bad it's good movie where we got to see dog murder.
Yeah.
It will sneak it in on you sometimes.
It's a valuable website.
I did not know that existed till right now.
Yes, it actually generally is.
I've been blindly going in and just seeing dogs die in movies without ever knowing.
My mom texts me. I'll get text messages. She'll be like, "Have you seen this? Is the dog okay?" And I'll have to I don't, sometimes I don't remember.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not remember? So I don't know. It's not a real dog.
I don't know. See, I know that the actor dog is fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
In certain horror movies, it's such a lazy plot device to shock the audience. But so that website does exist. If anyone, I think they highlight
honestly,
anyone.
I don't really mind because I know it's a fake. Listen,
it's fake.
If it was a real dog, I would be very upset.
Oh, I'm not.
You can kill a fake dog, but I'll tell you the trope I don't like is the dog runs off after whatever the terrifying thing is, and then you just hear in the distance, and that's how you know. I don't like that's lazy. Like, I get that you don't want to show us the dog being exploded or whatever because that's upsetting. But like, you can't just do the trope. You got to come up with it.
Weirdly enough, you know who kind of did that in a good way, like a good way. It's not a good movie, but in the Mark Wahlberg Fear. How you kind of hear a dog disappears.
I was just gonna say,
and then
once
it's
you've
through
seen
the
Mark
doggy.
Wahlberg in Fear,
yeah, you got to do something else. You got to mix it up somehow, because otherwise, it's just like we've all seen that scene a million times.
Well, right. I mean, it's in First Blood. I mean, for God's sake, and once Rambo's smoked your Dobermans, there's no one.
It's old as the hills at this point. Yeah. I'm tired. I did that. Taco is eyeing me now, like, what the fuck? What did you say?
I don't like. What are you guys talking about?
Fuck did you just say?
Jeez. Sorry, Taco. We'll move on. It's sensitive. But yeah. So, and then that's kind of like where he is initiated into it, and then earlier, Lon, you mentioned because it happens about twice in the movie in separate parts. Is then just how casually the core group just talks about their life and plans and what they're going to go to. And I think it's when James Foster buys into it, that's when it's over. And he's like, wait, I thought you guys told me you lived here all year round. Right? Because the way Mia Goth or Gabby sets it up is she's like, well, we did an architecture thing and then we just stayed and now we're kind of trapped. Like, this is just what we do.
Well, no,
So kind of
I think they make it clear that they're on vacation, and
okay,
they have a regular life. He's a he's an
okay.
architect. She's a model,
So I
But
took
they
that
come, but they
right.
actress.
make a point to come back every
But they
year
this
because
is their
Gotcha.
yearly. They come here every year for this
Apologies
vacation.
for
But
missing
but
that.
yeah, but it's like I guess I would liken it to at least I've heard. I wouldn't know for sure myself, but like a night of really hard drugs, you know what I mean? And then like you come to the next day and you're like the real world is just kind of there and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I got to go back and like
Oh,
live my regular life
if we're
again."
talking about
And I just don't
allegedly,
feel like I haven't shook off the like the kind of like debauchery of it all,
if we're
and
talking
then
about
just
allegedly,
them kind of living their normal life and doing their,
I've allegedly lived that a few times where you're like, I need a few. I always tell my wife with that. I'm like, you go out, it takes so much out of you mentally of like being on, and then for like a couple days, you're just like, I don't feel that I need to go back to normal because I stayed up
right.
all night drinking or doing drugs or whatever it
yeah,
is,
and
and
I think to me that's what's so interesting about the movie is the suggestion that it is sort of like any other vacation. Like they'll go back to their regular life, they'll kind of disconnect from this whole experience and get back into the everyday of living their sort of humdrum lives. And then next year they'll go on vacation. And like there are people who go on vacation and like get crazy for a week and then go
mm-hmm.
home and go back to their normal lives. And like this is just these people's versions of it. And again, it's that idea that like you could get used to a lot of stuff probably
Right.
like in the right circumstances with the right people around you egging you on, like you could integrate a lot of different stuff and compartmentalize it and move on with your normal life. And I like it does leave the fact that James doesn't leave is I think the only part of this that leaves you with that idea that he's permanently changed by this experience. Like
Yeah.
I think you could have had him leave Latoka and go back home with the rest of the group, and it would have been like, yeah, he's going to go back to his regular life and probably not even think about this that much.
Mm-hmm.
Like in a few weeks, this will fade to the back of his mind as like that crazy vacation I went on once.
Write his next book, right?
Like, well,
That's
you
a
would
big
just think
thing of
that
it.
he's going to be like one of them now. He will like, whereas with the way it ends, that you're kind of left thinking like, maybe not. Like maybe he's not
Right.
built for this,
Well, I think it's such an interesting thing too. There's not like he doesn't have a ton of dialogue, Skarsgård. A lot of the movie is just that far off kind of stare of him like processing everything he's going
kind of
through.
desperation eyes a lot of time.
And it does leave you to like kind of fill in a lot of the blanks of like, well, what is he experiencing in this moment?
Yeah. Watching this,
Brandon Cronenberg does that in all his movies. They're all like, there's a lot of staring, there's a lot of contemplating, there's a lot of like, yeah, what is like Caleb Landry Jones in Antiviral has a lot of that where he's just kind of looking off in the distance. You're like, what's going on with him right now?
Yeah, I wonder what he's going to do next.
Whatever you decide. What do you think he's thinking about? It's art, baby.
I think at first he's thinking it's good. It's going to be good for my next book, and then it's
that's what he's really thinking. Like, finally, I'll have something decent to write about.
No one will believe
this down.
No one will believe me too. We'll just change the name of the country. No, it's super interesting. It was also like I think I saw this first time I saw this was like right after, like, because he was just on that last season of Succession right after, and his character in Succession and just being that type of billionaire, but that doesn't give a shit about everything. It's like the same person almost. I was like, it's a weird juxtaposition of character, but he's becoming such a good actor, and like I feel like solid when I see his name and things. I don't know. I feel like we've gone through the movie quite a bit. What do you guys have any things we didn't bring up? Extra, not extra, other things to talk about. Infinity Pool that maybe we missed.
I feel pretty good. I think we got to most of it.
Yeah, I think the only note I had, and it's just a very obvious thing, was that I was getting a lot of like the Westworld vibes of like a place for the rich to kind of just come and indulge in their like their violent fantasies and then kind of go home consequence free, and then especially at the end, where they're just going to get on the bus, and Mia Goth looks so much like I've just seen women in that travel gear so much. Like you got the comfy sweater, hair pulled up, you're like you're on the go, but you're dressed for comfort, and it's just this is just a little vacay for them, you know.
Another thing to notice too of that is talking about the cloning, and I guess this answers my question from earlier too. Is her husband gets shot in the leg, and then is cloned again to be completely fine. Like he's not walking around with.
Oh yeah, does he have a cane or something at the end? I can't
Briefly,
remember.
He has a cane, but it's healed.
Yeah, they think they just heal him. Like, just do you think they just dip your leg in the red stuff and that heals you up? Kind of like it's like a Bacta tank, you know?
You just don't think about it. No, this is I was gonna say fun. It's not fun. It's a super interesting movie, and it's been one of those ones I don't know. I've shown now at least I guess all three of us. It has that rewatchability, which sometimes these more intense movies, at least for myself, don't have a rewatchability to them.
I really liked this one. I was surprised how much I liked it. Like I said, I feel like I had seen a lot of where rich people were in a crazy situation in a fancy place, and that had been kind of like a trope the last 2 or 3 years, and not that there's been some really good ones too. It's that in fact a lot.
Yeah, I just watched Ready or Not. I just talked about Ready or Not last night on
Ready or Not,
and it's the same,
really fun one.
Eat the rich commentary.
But I feel like this one was really good, and I liked it a little. I think I like it a little better than Possessor, although I want to rewatch Possessor again too.
Possessor.
I think I've seen this one twice. I only saw Possessor once, so I want to go back and revisit that. But either way, a really good movie. I would recommend this one for sure.
I really like that Cronenberg is also Brandon Cronenberg is becoming like towing a line into this like good sci-fi horror that we don't get a lot of too. It's not just
he's better Neil Blomkamp.
Maybe.
I don't know if you saw that demonic movie. You know what I'm talking about.
I did not.
I did not.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. It's fine.
I feel bad. On my shelf, I have a Blomkamp 3-pack because it came in like a lot. I bought on Facebook because I like District 9.
Yeah,
but
it was just Chappie. Just had to have. Chappie.
I had to have Chappie. It's a really nice package, but
it is a nice looking little box set, though.
It makes it seem like I'm the world's biggest Blomkamp.
I was gonna say, I like. Does it look? The side has his name down the spine. It really makes it seem like he's this auteur,
like the alien,
also,
like
right?
the alien cubed thing.
The Superscript 3, like.
Like oh yes, this auteur filmmaker. Here's his collection.
It's just
no Gran Turismo. Forget it.
Oh my.
We gotta get that one. It's a true story, you know. I was fucking it.
One real guy who races one time played a video game. That's the true story.
Every ad, I remember watching the trailer for that being like, is the trailer? Oh no, it's just a behind the scene featurette was the trailer for every AMC movie this summer. Yeah. Anyway, Lon, anything you'd like to plug or not plug? You're gonna plug. But say about Infinity Pool and then plug it.
No, I think we covered Infinity Pool. I feel good about it. I feel like we got it all in there.
Fantastic. Lon, what would you like to plug and let the people know where you're at? I know you usually have a few things cooking around.
Oh, you could follow me on whatever it's called, Twitter, the former Twitter. I don't Elon Musk's Twitter. At LONS over there. That's where I share everything I'm working on, and you should sign up for my newsletter. It's free. It's called Inside Streaming. It's got everything happening in streaming TV. I do calendar, I do news every day, headlines, whatever you want. That's inside.com/streaming.
It's very good.
And there's so much streaming content. Like I think all the time about how much stuff I'm missing and just keeping up on even reporting on it, let alone trying to watch so much of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I do every day is just here's everything that's going on all the big streaming platforms today. And just that is like, there's no good place for that. People are constantly like, I didn't even know this was out. It's like, well, now, like just today, my friend PJ was like, hey, just learned that John Carpenter true crime show went up on Peacock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a couple days ago, yeah.
And I do a calendar. So the day that came out, I wrote about it in Inside Streaming. So if I'm
nervous about that one. I didn't realize that it was like, I thought it was just going to be a John Carpenter anthology show, and I didn't realize it was true crime.
Yeah.
And then it's like kind of like stylized real crimes. It kind of makes me feel a little gross. Like I don't know
agree.
if
I'm not into true crime at all. And once I found out it was like, oh, he's doing that thing, I got a lot less.
It's an interesting pick for John Carpenter, right? Like,
I haven't decided. I can still see myself giving it at least an episode, but I don't know. It definitely felt a little grimier and a little less interesting to me once I found out that's what it was.
I did want to ask you, Lon, and I guess I probably should say this for off, about that. If you got any of it or watched any of that Goosebumps show. No, not.
I haven't. I was a little old for the Goosebumps books. Like that was like right after I sort of aged out. When I was a kid, John Bellairs was the author that kids read, like the early horror. They ended up adapting. Jack Black did a movie version of one of his books, The House with a Clock.
Oh, that movie's great.
Okay, that's a pretty good movie, actually.
I loved that book.
That movie.
In the early '80s, when I first got into reading horror books, John Bellairs was the guy that kids read. It was pre R.L. Stein, so I didn't grow up with Goosebumps, so no, I haven't checked that out yet.
Gotcha. No, it's been fun enough. There's not. I wish it stayed anthology. I'm liking, but they doing the thing that everything it's all interconnected and overlapping story and everything. Yeah. But Brian and I always say that House and the Clock on the Walls is actually a spiritual sequel to the Goosebumps movies that came out in 2015.
They all have Jack Black in them. They feel very similar.
It's actually the exact opposite. John Bellairs was first, and then R.L. Stein kind of riffed on his
But the way the movies came out, and even the fact that they both have Jack Black in them.
For sure.
They feel like a trilogy. You know, they all
definitely. And it's a real shame because that book, House with the Clock in its Walls, like that character that Jack Black is playing, he's in a bunch of books. It's like a whole... It's a whole John Bellairs wrote a whole franchise about those characters, and like it wasn't a big enough hit, so we'll never get to see any of them.
That's a bummer because they were.
There's a lot of kids movies that I really liked that came out when my son was younger that didn't. That one, the kid that would be king was really good.
Yeah.
What about the
just like
John C. Reilly?
They just didn't move the needle, you know. All the Leica movies, you know.
Was the vampire one with John C. Reilly or whatever? Vampire's Assistant.
Oh yeah, I don't remember that one, but I know which one you're talking about. Vampire's Assistant or something.
Anyway, I could sit here and talk about children's horror for way too long.
A perfect end to our Infinity Pool episode.
Yes. A nice double feature of Goosebumps Haunted Halloween and Infinity Pool with your 6-year-old. All right. You can find Brian and I also on the Twitters and the show and everything. Come say hi. Stay frightful, everyone. Bye. Welcome to Flyover State of Fear.